Morning glory and evening grace, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Thank you for listening. If you're listening on the Salem Radio Network or one of our great affiliates or watching on the Salem News Channel, welcome. My guest is Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin. Senator, good to see you again. How you doing?
Well, Hugh, doing good. How about yourself?
I am terrific. It's summertime. I love summer, and I'm glad you guys got the one big, beautiful bill passed. I have one specific question, one general question. Specific question. There's a rescission package headed the way of the Senate Finance Committee. In it, it will withdraw funding from PBS and NPR, which are direct competes with me, and I don't want them to be subsidized. Are you going to rescind the funding?
I sure hope so. I certainly would. I think there is some discussion inside the conference, but I hope we have the votes to, take up the entire package and make all the rescissions.
Is there any argument that is at all persuasive for you why we would subsidize NPR and PBS, given that there are now 1 million outlets out there, all of which have to compete on a level basis except for the federally funded ones?
No, we should have cut them off probably decades ago. So nothing persuasive to me, but the arguments being put forward, well, so much of this goes to local broadcasting, your local station, the emergency broadcast system, that type of thing. But again, you take a look at today's media world, it's just simply not required whatsoever.
Does the discussion of the content ever enter into it because it's so left-wing and getting further left and left? And by the way, they don't have any ratings anymore either, except for All Things Considered, which is talk radio for the left. But PBS doesn't have any ratings anymore.
Right. No. I think most Republicans realize that they're not particularly supportive of our causes. So, but again, there's always constituencies. We've got people in our conference who like to spend money and are afraid of any kind of cutback in spending. That's an issue.
Please just let them know that those of us in the world of radio and in the world of television, we just hate having a subsidy given to our competition. We can make it on our own. We've done it for 25 years tomorrow, but I hate the subsidy. Now, Senator, can you fill me in on what happens next now that the one big beautiful bill has passed? Will there be additional reconciliation packages?
I was given assurances that there would. Certainly, I listen. The main components of the one big beautiful bill I fully supported. I mean, the main component was we prevented a massive automatic tax increase on every American. We avoided default. With the messes that the Biden administration and Democrats left for us, we had to provide funding for the border. They opened up our borders, a clear and present danger to this nation. The raging wars have to bump up defense. My big issue is I wanted us to concentrate a lot more on spending. You've heard Republicans from the president on down, we don't have a revenue problem, we have a spending problem. And although the speaker's right, this is a historic amount of spending reduction, the problem is spending increases are an order of magnitude worse. We increased spending $2.1 trillion in 1 year. We're reducing spending here about 1.6 trillion over 10 years. Again, it's a good start, but one of the things I got out of the process was an involvement in a budget efficiency review process where we will go line by line, program by program, over the entire federal government, exclusive of Social Security and Medicare, and we're going to look for efficiencies. We're going to take a look at what we don't need to spend. And Hugh, when you've gone from $4.4 trillion in 2019 to over $7 trillion a day, it's a 58% increase. When you have 2,600 programs, I have to believe there are hundreds of billions of dollars and hundreds of programs. If you eliminate it, nobody would even notice, except for the grifters who are sucking down the waste, fraud, abuse, and pork. So that's going to be my mission. I've got the administration's buy-in on this. It'll be 3 senators, 3 House members working with Russ Vogt, OMB. We're going to scrub this budget in a very thorough and professional manner.
Are you entitled to an up or down vote at the end, given whatever recommendations you come up with?
No, we're going to have to persuade the public. We're going to persuade the public, and here's my hope. We wanted to go a lot further. I wanted to remove the Obamacare addition to Medicaid. I mean, that's what's producing all the scams and the legalized graft. But we're just going to have to get public support. We didn't do a real good job in terms of what we were trying to do with the Obamacare addition to Medicaid, afraid of people falsely accusing us of wanting to take Medicaid away from kids. So we've got to be smarter about this. But I think Elon Musk and Doge show the ways. You lay this stuff out. you cannot support it. You simply can't continue to spend this kind of money. So we have to make the case. We have got to take it public. We got to spend months doing it. And then hopefully we'll have, and again, pretty well assured that we'll have another bite of the apple here with another reconciliation package. Again, we've got to make
I
the
hope
case.
we do.
Public support for this.
I'd also like to urge that some people take a look, maybe on our team, maybe on their team, maybe on both teams, at bending the curve on the entitlements. And by the big two, Social Security and Medicare. By bending the curve, I mean something as mild as we're going to raise the retirement age by 1 month every year for the next 60 years. That means it'll go up to the age 70 in 60 years. Is there any appetite to do the most mild of things? Because long ago and far away, when you were in high school and I was working for Reagan, we got the thrift savings plan adopted, got rid of the guaranteed benefit pension for federal employees, and we phased it in over decades. No one even noticed. Can't we do that with the entitlements?
So there is some appetite. Whether there's enough, I don't know. But the good news here, it's not good news, it's bad news. But the fact of the matter is, non-defense discretionary and other mandatory, not Social Security, Medicare, or even Medicaid, we're spending almost $400 billion more this year than we did in 2019, actual outlays, plussed up by population and Biden's inflation. So again, we're almost $400 billion more than just that actual outlays for non-defense discretionary and other mandatory. That's $4 trillion worth of savings. That's what I was lamenting. That's why I was trying to push my colleagues. Guys, look at this. But that takes work. You know, some of that spending are kind of sacred cows. I understand that. But again, $400 billion. Now, if you go back to Bill Clinton, it's like $1.5 trillion more. So again, that's why I was laying out these pre-pandemic levels of spending. Actual outlays from Clinton in 1998, Obama 2014, or Trump 2019, leave Social Security and Medicaid and interest alone, plus those total outlines up by population inflation, you'd have a base budget somewhere between $5.5 and $6.5 trillion. Obviously, I'd go back to Clinton in 98, where we actually had a balanced budget. Let's ask, did we spend too little in 1998? I don't think so. We didn't spend too little in 2014 or 2019. So again, this is a common sense, business-like approach to look at this. You lay out, you make the case, but it's literally across the board. Almost any spending category is up more than population growth and inflation on all these accounts.
You know, that is a staggering amount of money. And it seems to me that if the BRAC process is used, the base realignment and closure process, where a group like you just outlined, 3 senators, 3 representatives, and 1 OMB director gets together and recommends a package of cuts or reforms or whatever you want, and then it goes for an up or down vote, it's the only way to get this stuff done, because the moment you get into cutting, even something as stupid as NPR, and God love NPR, I like Steve Inskeep, he's a friend of the program, I like having him on, but it's the dumbest appropriation we make. Absolutely the least useful, absolute dumbest appropriation we make. And we can't get it done. So unless you have a BRAC system or something like that, will we ever succeed in getting back to normal, Senator Johnson?
Well, first of all, I'll bet you we'll find things dumber than that. But regardless, the problem is we have no support or help from Democrats. None. Of course, they're all concerned now that they're out of power about these massive deficits. But did you realize the 7 years prior to COVID, the average deficit was $660 billion? Still way too high. Any rational or responsible leader after COVID, once the economy recovered and employment returned to normal levels, you would have brought that spending deficit down to pre-pandemic levels. It's not what Democrats did. They kept spending at $6.5 trillion, then up to $7 trillion, average deficit of $1.9 trillion. So Democrats, they'll be hypocrites and say, oh boy, Republicans, you got to bring that deficit down. They didn't do it. By the way, when they had the chance to repeal tax cuts for the wealthy, they didn't do that. They could have repealed the entire Tax Cut and Jobs Act. They didn't do that. So again, we'll get no help from Democrats. So the only way we can do this is through rescissions, through reconciliation, where Republicans have to gather up a majority vote. And Hugh, as you saw, that's not easy. It's not easy to do that. I would have liked to have done a lot more spending reduction, but we just didn't have the support in our conference.
It's not easy, but it is inevitable, because it's like bankruptcy. It happens slowly, then all at once. We cannot. I think Jerome Powell said this week, am I right, Mr. Senator, that this, where we are, can be sustained, but the path is not sustainable. I mean, we're going to we're going to have a bond crisis.
That's been my concern. That's why I issued my 30-page report showing you can't do it all through economic growth. That might flatten the curve, but if you really want to bend the curve down toward balance in 10 years, you'll finally hit balance about 10 years. You also have to have a return to pre-pandemic spending level. It's about 15% below where we are today. So
well, Godspeed, Senator. In doing so, come back anytime to preach that gospel, and please kill NPR with a stake through the heart or a silver bullet or a wooden cross or whatever it takes to kill off NPR and PBS. Thank you, Senator Ron Johnson. I'll be right back, America. Stay tuned.